being wrong.
Yeah, was that something there, or do you think, or was that before that?
But that through both sleeves.
Where you going with this? You can't use those.
What's that? No, to prop it up behind it. People are titillated.
It's not the merchandise live stream just before anyone is concerned, but that's not going to work. Yeah.
All right, leave it there, Jake. Bring in some hangers.
No, nice, no one can see it now. Yeah, so we wanted to hang up so no one could see it. Come with me, Brian. Don't say me. Oh. Whoa.
Oh, is that an ad on our video?
No, that's an ad on Max Tuning's.
Oh, with Nick Bear.
Nick Bear.
Can you show me the tape dispenser, please?
Do you actually need the tape dispenser?
Yeah.
Here, space.
Ergonomics isn't a laughing matter.
It's very serious. Oh, it's kind of blurry.
Can everyone hear us and see us and see the new merch?
Ambient mode. Are you getting that? Is YouTube prompting you to do ambient mode stuff?
No. Will the Seagull Boys ever make an OnlyFans? Have you not? Are you not already subscribed?
Geez, the black looks great.
Yeah.
Black looks great.
They're great t-shirts.
I can't describe to you how nice the colours in this are. So this is like the first in our legend series of Sikhistan folk heroes. So this is Stan the Strong.
He's fighting a bear with a barbell.
Yeah, with a little Sikh
just in case.
Cap. I can't
No, it's so good.
It's
a work
amazing.
of art.
Yeah, the t-shirts are really nice. So we've got a nice little video of the t-shirts being made for a local company. They make t-shirts for a long time, but these are our Seeker Strength NFL, and then of course we have the Seeker Strength Training Pants 2.0, which loads of people are trying to put in pre-orders already, both friends and clients. And you just can't be at that.
You can't be doing it. Family, friends.
When am I getting your pants?
Yeah.
When you fuck off and buy it. No, but on a serious note.
No, any family or friends who are going to go to the World Championships and win things, they can have gear.
And then there's a little Seeker Strength on the back. Can you see that? Can you see it?
Yeah, they can see it.
Dar's got a white one on his. So that's vinyl printed. T-shirts will be pre-ordered, so everyone will be able to get a t-shirt. Again, pants will be limited quantities for order. Be going live Friday. So I thought I was hoping for Wednesday, but not till Friday. So be live Friday and it'll be up for until Tuesday morning. So you'll have the weekend to get it. So it'll be these t-shirts. There'll be a deal on the t-shirts. So you'll be able to get t-shirts and pants for deal. You'll be able to get two t-shirts and a pants deal. So it'll be 3 different deals. Obviously, you can get everything individually if you want. There's no have to buy a deal. But yeah.
Jeez, you love a bargain though.
People love bargains.
Yeah.
Bargain.
I love bargains.
Merch not yet. Eat my sandwich. Oh, Rambo. Johnny's fun. What was that merch? Engineering 100. Hi lads, thoughts on barbell pullovers, and what would your general approach be for the S&C of non-humans? Barbell pullover. Oh, is that the thing where you're lying prone on the bench and you're You know, these ones, isn't it?
Like a reverse skull crusher.
Yeah, pullovers are these ones where you're like straight arms. I know someone who dislocated their shoulder twice on
No.
barbell pullovers. Yeah, so he'd previous shoulder issues and he dislocated it, but it happened multiple times. He knew what happened when he was doing the barbell pullover. It's a chest thing. It's like no one really does them anymore. It's like kind of an old school chest kind of movement.
Would it be like
I would say
probably useless?
chronically sore in your shoulder, but never given them anyone. And thoughts on general approach for the S&C of non-humans? We've talked before about do people use smart principles of training programming in the use of sports horses?
Yeah.
And we reckon it could be a huge breakthrough in the market for us, is to teach them how to not see. Usually what happens in show jumping and racing and stuff is that like you'll just have a trainer and everyone be like, Jesus, Willie Mullins is a great trainer, and no one really know what he does. Willie might not even know what he does. Willie just have a tactic and you'll just keep using it, and
Willie just has a feeling.
Inconsistently producing good horses. So I reckon there's a gap in the market there to educate some horse trainers, because they have a lot of money.
There's definitely like a group out there that are extremely scientific, but I guarantee you there's a lot of by-feelers.
It's
like
no.
feel.
They're all the trainers by field. There's no scientific trainers.
There's a few.
No, there's none. Guaranteed there's none.
There definitely is.
There isn't. Been around horses for like 20 odd years. Haven't met one yet. Don't know any of them. There's not that many of them. Like there's very few big trainers, and none of them are scientific. There's a lot of people involved in horses who are scientific. Like some of the vets would be. Genetic testing is a big thing.
Yeah.
Obviously doping horses is a big thing.
Massive thing.
But when it comes to trainers, if you're not wearing your paddy cap, your fedora, and a long
wax jacket,
minimum. You can wear a cowboy hat too, a wax cowboy hat, in your 50s minimum.
Yeah.
Science is a thing.
A Nokia mobile phone in your pocket here.
Always ringing.
Always in the pocket.
There's no
always on the phone.
And I guarantee you, if he's a scientific trainer, he's not a real trainer. He's moonlighting. He's LARPing.
He's an S&C coach of the horse.
Hey, low lads. Trying to keep my arm straight during... I've top chat on again.
I was just like, why are you reading this?
Where? I'm still on the right one, though. Trying to keep my snatch clean. Feels like I'm extending my triceps. No, that's not really what you want. If it corrects your problem for bending your arms to snatch and the clean, then that's fine for now. But it shouldn't feel like you're massively extending. You're not locking out your arm. It's far better than to be actually bending your arms. But it shouldn't really feel. Your arm should be pretty loose, and they should remain in this flex position reasonably of their own accord, or a straighter position, because you want to have that ability then to immediately contract and pull your elbows up. So if you're in too much of a flex position, it slows down. It provides us, again, it's in the opposite. It's the reason we don't want to be bending our arms in the snatch and the clean, is because that we're slowing down the barbell, we're distributing the load onto our arms a little weaker. But also, when we go from the extension after the kind of explosion point, we need to contract our arms and our upper body and use the barbell to pull the barbell in a vertical direction and send the barbell up. But what happens when we go from that bent arm is we have to relax these muscles, ideally, or we're going from a minor flex position, we're limiting the use for upper body. So if you're going from a fully flexed arm, you have to go from fully flexed to relax the muscle and then pull it again, so you're just slowing down the barbell a little bit and still distributing the load in your arms a little bit too much. So you want to have as loose as you can while still keeping a straight arm and a tight back.
The other thing I found that when people get really active with that tricep extension, particularly in the snatch when they're setting up, because their triceps are so hard, relaxed, their shoulders go loose, because they're like pushing down into the bar, their shoulders never get set. But yeah, you definitely don't want that. It kind of messes you up.
And what generally happens in as well with that really flexed tricep is you see people just end up swinging the barbell because they're not really adept at getting the timing right or the use of their upper body. So when they make the extension or contact, the barbell just goes like this because their arms end up straight.
100%. Vegan Gains is here, which is great because I was worried after your vegan protein bar review yesterday on the YouTube Shorts.
Yeah, I accidentally
was going to.
I bought one of the PhD bars. PhD. I don't know if I think they're in America and Canada, aren't they?
I don't know.
I bought one and I accidentally bought the vegan ones. Usually the normal ones are quite nice. There's like a peanut butter and jelly and the white chocolate blondie one, but the vegan one was not good. Which is doing a disservice to vegan related products.
Matt Jusum says, what are your views on overwarm warm-up sets before volume work? For example, hitting an 80% 1RM squat before 5 by 10 at 60% to maintain strength during volume phases. No, definitely don't do it. So in the cases where you're doing it and you're doing all the volume work afterwards, it just means that the speed during the volume work, the quality of the volume work, and the actual weight the volume work is being done at has in some way been compromised. If the volume work isn't the priority and say you are achieving the volume work, then the 80% for a single is absolutely useless and will do nothing to maintain or stay in touch with those heavier weights. Like this idea of touching heavier weights really isn't the thing. Psychologically, it's a thing for people because people get it in their head that like, oh, I haven't had over 100 kilos or over 200 kilos on my back in so long. And they feel like it's going to really affect their ability to squat heavy weights when they have to go up to heavier weights in 1 month's time or 6 weeks time or 8 weeks time, whereas it doesn't. It has no bearing on it at all. When you're in a volume phase, you do your volume work. When you're in a moderate phase, you do your moderate work. When you're in a peaked phase, you do your peaked work. In a tapering phase, you do your tapering work. There's no need to ever feel like you need to keep your hand in here and keep your hand in here and keep your hand in here. It really slows people's overall progression down because they end up spending the entire year then in this kind of moderate purgatory of not quite training hard enough, or maybe training too hard, or not doing enough volume, or maybe doing too much volume. And it just doesn't make for long-term progress. That's why you see weightlifting athletes being plateaued for years, or people weightlifting for 5 years and having the same numbers for the last 3 or 4 years. When you're in a phase of training, you do that training. When you're in a different phase of training, you do that different training. You don't ever need to keep your hand in. Now, if you're a weightlifter approaching competition, you'll keep your hand in with heavier weights, but then you won't be doing the volume work, So it's not don't do it. It's a terrible idea.
So there is sometimes I'll have my weightlifters who are coming into a peaking phase do a top single and drop down, but for minimal volume. I'm talking 2 sets of 2 or 3 sets of 2. This is usually, but it's the opposite of the case you're proposing. So they're actually trying to hit heavier singles. They're trying to be in a kind of a peaking phase and they're going to keep their lifts at a stronger point, and the volume doesn't matter that much. But if we only do heavy singles and we don't do any volume, we'll actually see the opposite, and we'll see a reduction in strength, especially if we're just doing a heavy single. So it's the volume that maintains and improves your strength, really, not so much the heavy singles. Weightlifting is a little bit different because it actually doesn't matter so much what they hit in terms of that 1RM or that single they're hitting maybe on a weekly basis. And this is usually only happen for 4 to 5 weeks at most during a peaking phase. What you're trying to do is keep in touch in relation to these heavier weights. We're using squatting as a kind of a skill development as much as a kind of strength builder. So it is both, of course. We're still looking for high force production for the weightlifters, but we're allowing them to kind of hit these heavier singles, and then the drop down sets, which would be minus 30 kilos or minus 40 kilos, is something that is used as a way of keeping the strengths going a little bit more, because if we only did that heavy single without the drop down sets, in this case, we'd actually lose strength too quickly for these weightlifters, because the once or twice a week we'd hit a heavy single or heavy double wouldn't be productive enough for them. So it's really the volume is the main driver. And if we were looking for these same weightlifters who were trying to improve their 1RM, we'd be really pushing the volume and we'd forget about those singles until later in the block. The only other time I've used a kind of a heavy single approach in the drop downs is when someone's been peaking into a squat and they should have hit something bigger, and we've done sets and reps that have suggested that they're capable of doing more. So if they've done, let's say they're trying to squat 200 kilos and they did 3 by 3 at 190 kilos. And we're like, okay, look, we went for the peaking phase and we did a normal kind of peaking week for their squat and they didn't hit the squat. We'll go, okay, look, if we have time in training, what works sometimes is it's kind of like fighting a fire, or it's kind of like an emergency plan for a peaking phase, is they will, for maybe 2 weeks after, maybe 3 weeks, depending on how the squats are going, is do these heavy singles and drop downs. And sometimes it gives them a chance. Maybe it was a psychological issue and they weren't comfortable hitting weights, so this gives them a little bit more of a chance. Or maybe they need a little bit more time with singles, but it gives them an option when we're kind of remote coaching people to kind of an emergency plan B like DEFCON 5 where it'll save the peak. This doesn't always work. Sometimes they'll end up maybe like hitting 95 a few times. And then sometimes we'll see them hit well over it. This is usually in a scenario where we're like, okay, you can do more than 200. You've been working hard for it, so this is worth a try. It's really negative, but it's not always a guaranteed peak. Usually the best numbers and the biggest numbers are hit with that cleaner peak. So with the method where you do those heavy singles and then you, for the 2 or 3 weeks after, usually the PB you'll hit will be maybe 2 to 5 kilos more. Whereas with a sharper peak, we'll see maybe those 5 to 20 kilo peaks, depending on how we went with it. So it's a way of saving progress to get some progress, despite it not being the sharpest spoon in the spork drawer.
I do know. I like sharp, aggressive peaks.
Yeah, I much prefer the peak where it's like, yes, we hit it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's try this for a few weeks and hopefully you'll... Because that's coming from coach's point of view here. Like, look, I want them to get a PB,
100%, yeah.
Is that the best PB for them? Maybe not, but you want your athletes to hit stuff sometimes,
Yeah.
Especially when they could have done more,
That is one thing I think oftentimes, like, so myself and Owen are coaches, but this is with all coaches where, like...
But we're human too.
Coaches, like, we're competitive people, like, it's disappointing for us when athletes don't hit PBs. Like, it bothers me when athletes aren't doing well. And, like, obviously everyone goes through bad stages of training and different phases work better than others. And, like, not every time it's going to be a 10 kilo PB, but, like, it negatively affects my mood if people don't do well.
Yeah, I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed when a max that I know should have gone well didn't go well,
Yeah.
It's you're just mad, just super
it's
mad.
Just why didn't it? Why?
Oh,
why?
Yeah.
Okay, not the merch. I don't believe you. So our incredibly open title has made people believe that merch is actually on sale.
If anyone was going to do that, it would be us, to be fair. I don't doubt you for doubting us.
Alexander Ureki says, will Seek Voice ever make an OnlyFans account? We have one, yeah.
If things get bad enough, like, we'll have to.
What you have to do is you have to go on the website, and once you buy all the programs in the same order, you get access.
It'll just be pictures of Dara's flipper feet.
Just massive feet.
There's definitely a market for that.
The big long toes?
Yeah, with like...
Oh, because I've joined toes. I've webbed feet.
But bits of like almonds crushed up in random food bits.
Yeah.
There's definitely a niche out there for that.
Definitely. If anyone knows it, just email us.
Hang on a second. I just saw a comment saying in before 40 likes, I will burn the pants. That. There's currently 70 people and only 19 likes. So we might actually have to burn the pants.
So maybe 35 likes to burn the pants.
So maybe no one wants the pants. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's something we did.
There's 4 boxes of pants sitting just over here,
ready to be burned.
And you just want to burn them, obviously. Okay, Scott Kerr says, question on the bench program. I'm on week 4 and I feel weak as fuck. I did 4x4 of 120, which should be pissed, but it was difficult. So why? So the start of the bench program, as at the start of the squat program, as the start of the deadlift program, as the start of the strict press program, is about accruing volume. So what's happening as you get into week 4, you're getting into more of the moderate volume and slightly higher intensities. And it's just that initial shift over is difficult because you've started to kind of adapt to that higher volume piece. But I wouldn't be worried at all. We've a lot of people feel like the program is difficult as they're doing it, particularly the difference in frequency as you go into the later weeks makes the program feel difficult. But don't be worried, Scott Kerr. It's all good. Smith Jitsu says, are front squats necessary for building heavy power or hang cleans for the non-weightlifting athletes?
No.
They're not necessary, but they do help. The most important thing for building heavy power or hang cleans for non-weightlifting athletes is heavy hang and power cleans. And then after that, it's just a big back squat.
Yeah.
The back squat will transfer over better than anything will.
Then deadlift.
Yeah.
Then probably plyometrics. And then probably a front squat.
Yeah. But
only in the case of hang powers and power cleans.
Yeah. The hang powers and just the power cleans in general, you just, most of the time, athletes won't ever get won't ever get to the point where they're really stagnated on them. Most of the time, they'll just constantly keep going up because you have the thing of getting a bit stronger, getting a bit faster, and your technique improving.
Wait, I forgot the first one. It's just talent.
Oh, sorry, talent is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Okay, Banana Bread with the emoji says, question regarding steroid prevalence in weightlifting. Is it reasonable to assume that China dope more than Koreans, Japanese, etc. because communist governments? If so, isn't this inequality an argument against rights? I wouldn't say anyone dopes more than anyone. Obviously, in certain countries, you've like systematic doping setups where you have your federation helping you and your government is helping you. And particularly in certain countries like China and Russia, it appears as though, it's been proven that government officials will be manipulating drug testers. They'll be stopping drug testers coming into the country. Their anti-doping setups will actually be helping the athletes instead of testing the athletes. But to assume that one athlete would be cleaner or one athlete wouldn't be cleaner isn't really appropriate because every country has athletes that are doping.
There's actually an argument against anti-doping.
Yeah.
So this is a fairness argument. So if it requires you to have an all-powerful, all-seeing, all-committed doping governing body whose sole purpose is to make sure you don't pass tests and to win medals, then that's an argument against anti-doping, because if the barrier for anti-doping is higher than the possibility of anyone less than that standard of the communist government being able to help you dope is below that, then it will mean that people above that line, so that WADA line up here, will have more of a chance of winning medals, which is what we do see. We made videos about this before, where they have more resources to commit to passing drug testing. So this is an argument really against anti-doping, and it's a good argument. And it's one I think like Clarence would use a lot in relation to his anti-doping videos. And it's certainly a very good argument because it's the reality of the situation. It's like when people ask us questions, when say I did a few weeks ago, I posted on my Instagram about body weight standards and when you're not a beginner. And some people got a little bit annoyed saying, oh, this doesn't apply to a 140 kilo junior lifter. And my answer was, when have you ever seen a 140 lifter? Literally seen thousands of lifters and strength athletes at the moment, and I've never seen a 140 kilo someone come into me. Realistically, what I've seen is the vast majority of people are in the ages of 20 and 30. They weigh between 70 and 95 kilos, and these are the standards we see, generally numbers where you see someone become more proficient and more confident in weightlifting. And you have to give answers and give thoughts that are in relation to what actually happens in the world rather than just theoretical ideas. And this is kind of in that line is, do we see anti-doping working? And it's like, not really. It's kind of, you have to go with what's actually happening rather than what you would like to be happening or what you think should be happening.
Chris says, hey guys, care to throw an opinion on Gabriel's recent split jerk video? We've had so many questions on this. He recommends dumb leg goes forward, goes front. That's pretty much what the standard is all the time. Your non-dominant leg. If you kick a football with your right leg, usually your left leg goes forward. Now there's exceptions to that case, but most of the time, that's how you're kind of naturally going to land, will be left leg forward. If you kick a ball with your right foot, it's how you'll naturally want to split jerk as well. It's not. I think people are reading into this way too much just by the amount of questions we've gotten on in the last week and a half. You really don't need to think about it.
Whatever's happening at the moment.
Whatever's happening is probably it.
I've only ever seen one person in the last 11 years of weightlifting pick their wrong leg, where it's actually been like, just the push test. And they're like, oh shit, that's way better. And you're like, yeah. I've never seen anyone pick the wrong leg.
Paddy changed what leg went forward after like.
Oh, was it you?
Yeah.
Oh, it might have been you.
Yeah.
I think you're the only person I've ever seen pick the wrong leg for weightlifting.
And I've been weightlifting for like weightlifting now for 4 or 5 months.
You're the only person I've ever seen pick the wrong leg.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know. I don't know why that was. I've never seen anyone else. I've never looked at someone being like, are you splitting with the wrong leg? You'll know immediately. It'll feel terrible.
Yeah.
It'll feel like you're trying to butter your toast with the other hand. It's going to feel so wrong. This is like this internal rotation, external rotation thing.
You don't need to think about it.
No, you don't need to think about it. You lock out your elbows, lock out your triceps. Yeah, definitely.
Owen Fagan said, this is actually so true. Owen said, I sold overpriced water to Darrow when he was hungover in Edinburgh last weekend.
Was this the guy?
This must be the guy. I was talking to Garth about it on the Royal Mile in Edinburgh.
Royal Mile?
A very, very hungover Darrow Fitz. And it was great to meet you, by the way.
You could sell anything to hungover Darrow.
You could, if it's any kind of fluid at all, he'll pay anything for it. £3 £3 or $2.99 for a bottle of Lipton iced tea.
But sure, the pound is worth anything. So what does that mean? What was it, like €1 now, or what's that? What's the pound to euro? Nobody knows. Like.
It's not far off.
Did you ask him when is Scotland joining the European Union?
I actually didn't bring that up. I could barely talk.
The pro-independence thing wasn't what you're going for.
Owen is a Scottish Scottish guy who's into powerlifting. Didn't know any of the lads we knew in Edinburgh Uni.
That's fair enough. Why would he?
Yeah.
So we say same before burn all the pants. Gaxi Hunter said, how hard should my squats be for strength work? My top set today had me feeling like I was going to keel over on my penultimate rep.
Keeling over on your second last rep is obviously not ideal. And keeling over on your last rep isn't ideal either. I think this thing of like going, how hard should you go is really, really a very, very subjective thing, you know, because it comes down to RP. For some people, if they were lifting weights really hard and nearly passing out, they'll think nothing of it. And then other people, if they're watching them, might say like, oh my God, you're about to die. Like you can barely breathe and you're dry heaving, sitting on the bench in between your sets. So it's not really a thing for me of like judging how hard an athlete should go or how hard I should go when I'm training. My big thing I'll gauge off is like how well I can recover for the next session. Because realistically, if you're getting everything done in your training session as you're doing it, it doesn't really matter what the immediate outfall or fallout from that is. What really matters is like if you have to train the next day or 2 days afterwards, what does that session look like? And that's how I judge it as to how hard you should be going for your strength sessions, you know. So like for me, when I'm coaching athletes, I don't really care how hard it is in the session, as long as they're getting all the work done. It could be a session where they say like, oh, the session went really well, but I was toast for 2 days afterwards, and then they've gone too hard. Or alternatively, it could be where they go really, really hard in the session and they're saying, I could barely make it through. Yet the next day they hit their snatches and clean and jerks, or they hit their squats and presses with no issue, you know. It's yet another argument against RPE or auto-regulation of training in the session itself. It really isn't the important thing. What's important is your bank of work over the course of the week or the month, you know.
I've lost my place.
Eric is up next. And he said, you guys have talked about setting realistic goals. I've recently started weightlifting and I am power snatching 70 kilos fairly easily. What's a realistic snatch goal for me? This could be like a realistic snatch goal for your life, could be 170 or 190 kilos, or it could be 85 kilos without knowing any more. But the thing about like good goal setting, or what you might call smart goal setting, one of the main things is like that they're incremental goals, that you're building up a course, or like you're building up a body of work of goal setting and goal achievement over the course of your years. So your next realistic good goal should be to snatch 70 kilos with good form and not have it as a power snatch anymore. Because at the moment you might be power snatching 70 kilos, but your full snatch with good technique might be 40 kilos or 50 kilos, you know. So if you're talking about having a realistic snatch goal, that's the realistic goal, is full snatch with good technique, 70 kilos, and then build that up from there.
Kind of, to be honest, it's like how long is a piece of string, you know? Like when I think back to my first ever competition, there was a older gentleman in his 50s, but maybe 60s. I'm going to say 50s, split snatching like 115, clean and jerking like 150, split cleaning and split jerking 150. You know, and I was my second, I think it was my first competition or second competition where I was doing like, maybe second competition, maybe doing like 80 and 100 or something like that, you know. And I remember thinking like, fuck, they're big weights. But like, I always had no doubt about it. I never thinking, oh man, I'm never gonna lift those. I was thinking, oh man, I can't wait to lift those, you know. So a lot of how your perception of your goal and what you think you can do, whether you're wrong or you're right, you know, whether you think you can do it or you can't do it, you're right, you know, whatever. If you think you can snatch 150 someday, you might be right. If you think you can't snatch 150 someday, then you're definitely right, you know. So setting goals is entirely personal in some ways, but it's also, you have to be somewhat realistic. But it really depends on who you are, where you are in training, what kind of person you are, how much time you're going to dedicate to it, how good you think you can be. One thing I will say, weightlifting, is that I've been wrong more often than I've been right in relation to talent when people are at their raw beginner stage. Because I've seen a lot of people who I thought would be very good, especially male and female lifters across both of them, where I've been like, damn, this person is going to lift some big weights in a couple of years, you know, and they're going to progress really well. Looking at like their physical talent and the lifts they're doing now, like their muscle bodies, their kind of body fat levels, their limb lengths, their kind of engagement with weightlifting, how weightlifting was going for them at the moment. And I've been wrong more often than I've been right in relation to guessing how well someone turns out, you know, because it is a very hard sport of all things to do for weightlifting. So setting realistic goals isn't something we could really give you in that regard, like exact numbers. It really depends on you as an individual. I would say sometimes I say if you have to ask the question, then you've already set yourself off to a bad start, you know. You would just get it, go and do it, you know. And I know that's kind of somewhat a mean thing to say to some individual. You're asking this question, you know, and I don't want to insult you by saying that it's some kind of derogatory David Goggins kind of shit, you know. But I'd say might be a better way of phrasing this is, don't get into that mindset, you know, of putting it out there. It's you have to decide what goal you're going to do, you know, and what numbers you think you can do. And the only way you'll find out is lift for 10 years and see if it works out, you know. You'll have a good idea after 10 years if you can be any good. Because if you're still snatching 70 kilos in 10 years, then you might be like, wait, I'm not going to snatch 150, I don't think. But if in 10 years' time, you're snatching 135, 140, you can go like, oh, I have a good chance of snatching 150, you know. So don't put that kind of thought process out there where you're thinking, what's a good goal for me? What's realistic? You know, have the big goals and think I'm going to do really well. But at the same time, you just have to be like, right, I have to snatch 75 next before I can get to that 150. So you kind of break them down. I know Dar's done a lot of goal setting videos and talks like that, where it's like realistic goals but having longer term goals. So like kind of dealing with stuff in the short term. But I don't like the vibes you get from people when they say, what do you think I can do, you know? Because it's an unanswerable question. And the trend is generally people who ask that question don't seem to be the biggest. And I don't know if there's a correlation there, maybe. I don't. What do you think?
Yeah, there's definitely a self-limiting factor to that, you know.
Yeah.
Like, go and look at the goal setting videos. But I think the thing that Garth talked about, like the athletes where they're really worried about the end outcome. I think a big reason for that is they're not process orientated. They're just outcome orientated. Like when Garth talks about it never being like, oh, imagine if I lifted those weights one day. It's just like, oh, I'm just going to keep doing the same training I'm doing.
Yes.
I trust the process completely. I enjoy the process. Now I'm going to just go through that. Like, goals are very useful and stuff, but it's the process is what's really, really important. The process of going through training, trusting the coaching, trusting the programming, all of that is important. And I think if you have somebody who's walking into the gym first day and like, oh, any weight in the world is going to be no bother for me, you know, then they really trust the process, and you're probably seeing better outcomes in that case because of that person being more process orientated rather than outcome orientated.
I would also wonder, see, like I could be influencing this because of me being positively predisposed to weightlifting. Maybe I felt like that it was never important to ask that question because I didn't see any major issues. But on the same point, generally in one whole year, I added a clean and jerk, 1 kilo clean and jerk. I went from 125 to 126 in a year.
Yeah.
At one stage. Then I went from 125 to like 140 in 2 months. So it wasn't that I was just clean sailing all the way to certain numbers, you know. So you will see just that the best lifters don't even kind of entertain that stuff or put that out there because they've never even let that doubt enter their mindset. That's just like, oh no, of course I'm gonna get to the best numbers I can possibly get. They might not be right, but they don't ever think about it.
I will say when I was training in CrossFit Cork, before I ever went to Limerick or anything,
Yeah.
I might have been doing like 75 or 80 kilos in the snatch. And a few months into training, and Keith, one of the lads who was doing some coaching there, Keith was like, of course you'd snatch 100 kilos. And I was just like, I'd never seen anyone snatch 100 kilos.
Yeah.
I'd never known people to have done it. And he was just like, sure, of course you would. Why wouldn't you? You just go and train and do the things you're doing, and you're young and strong and no bother. And then, like, true to form, after like 6 or 8 months of training, and well, it happened, no bother. But like, it was, I just remember that being so shocking, being like, sure, how could that ever happen? Like, and he was just like, yeah, of course you would. Why wouldn't you?
Was that the right squad guy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, of course he said that. Yeah, it's just, I just
2 seconds. Yeah. Gerf said Riot Squad, not Ride Squad.
Oh, yeah.
Just in case.
Well, the Riot Squad guy would probably help you with the 100 kilo snatch as well. Yeah, I don't ever remember thinking like that,
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't imagine, I don't ever remember, say, then, like, Clarence ever talking like that back then, or any of that kind of stuff, It just, and Eric, this isn't picking you, this is a topic that's been coming up for years and years and years and years, and my default answer at the moment to this topic is, like, go live for 10 years, and then come back to me and I'll tell you what I think you could do. Being a humorous joke, because of course then they'd know and they wouldn't need to come back to us.
Okay. Unmec says, hi lads, stop playing basketball to focus on weightlifting. Is around an hour of bike ride a good way to keep some cardio level, or is it too much? Also, will my rate of progression increase? So on the hour of bike ride, if that's an hour of bike riding a day, it is too much. It's probably going to be too much. It may not be if it's very, very light bike riding, kind of just barely tipping around. But if you were training kind of 6 times a week, 5 times a week, and doing an hour on the bike of quite intense cycling, like cycling where you're into that kind of moderate level of cardiovascular output, that might be too much. That might just be a level where your weightlifting is getting held back slightly. Now, you'll definitely still improve in weightlifting. Will definitely be much better for your weightlifting if you keep up a level of cardiovascular output that's ensuring you've good health, ensuring you've good recovery, ensuring good work capacity over a long period of time. But you have to kind of play that line as well. The other thing that it definitely affects is your current body shape and body mass. Because if you're a 75 kilo lifter really struggling to put on size and really struggling to get up to 80 kilos or whatever it might be, and you're doing an hour of cycling every day, it is going to be incredibly negative on your climb up to 80 kilos, Now, if you're a 106 kilo lifter looking to get down to the 96s, it might be a bad thing for your weightlifting at all. You might get some favorable leverages. You might gain some range of motion around certain joints. But it really is a case of, like, it depends. Also, will my rate of progression increase? So, will I get faster quicker? Gerf made a great point earlier where he talks about, like, being stuck at one number for a year and then putting 20 kilos on in 2 months, Rate of progression in weightlifting or progression in general in weightlifting tends to be quite non-linear. You'll get periods of training where you'll put big increases on your 1RMs, and then you'll have the next 2 years where you're just doing nothing with your 1RM numbers, So it is, in terms of your rate of progression isn't something that you could ever kind of track or ever monitor. You should never think, okay, 6 months ago I put 5 kilos on, this 6 months I'm going to put 5 kilos on again, and then next 6 months I'll put 5 kilos on again. It's like, it's about as useless as those things where people say, like, if you just added a kilo to that every day for the next year, you'd put on 365 kilos onto your squat. Like, that's useless. In terms of rate of progression, you can't really, it's not something that needs to be tracked or monitored.
Daniel Timmons is saying, Garth, your new coach is a unique take on the clean, mainly not using complete full extension. What are your thoughts on the way of teaching, and will you be adopting some of that in your own clean? So when we talk about full extension here, kind of at Seek a Strength, a lot of time, we're not looking for a huge amount of extension. A lot of the issue people make is that they pull the barbell too high and then they end up riding it down, or catch you too high and squatting it down, or pulling the barbell too high and then miss timing and they get down too fast. We have a lot of bar crash. So really what we're looking for is like the adequate amount of extension for people in their clean and what looks the best. And then we have kind of that really aggressive speed under, which is a big thing. Anton, the first day we were training, he said, do you want to do your own style of clean, or do you want to do my style? My style referring to his style of clean, or the Ukrainian kind of way. Obviously, I said, let's do your way, because that's obviously what he's proficient with and probably what he prefers. But I also wanted to learn that way and see what way it was. If you look at my most recent Instagram post, there's some cleans there and they look very good. Honestly, time will tell with the heavier weights. I haven't done any heavy weights with it, and I won't be for another few weeks. So until then, it feels good now. And I think it'll feel good heavy weights, but we won't really know until we get there. So I'm more of the thought process that this is what the coach thinks is best, and this is their kind of way of doing things. Then I'm all for diving into their way of doing things and listening, because I think if you get coached by someone, or you get mentored by someone, or you go for an internship with someone, or whatever it is, I think you should just wholeheartedly embrace what they're telling you. Your default assumption should be, this is the right way, or this is the best way to do it, or the best way for me, even if it might not be, but you should just believe in it as 100% as you possibly can when you're training with them, So that's why I had multiple reasons why I wanted to learn that style of clean, and why I was like, okay, let's do his style. But that was one of them, I think that's kind of one of his trademark things, and not that we should be getting coaching for someone just because they have trademark aspects, but this is kind of a fundamental technique aspect of his coaching. So that's kind of why. So we'll see how it looks. It feels good at the moment. A couple of interesting things about it. So there's a lot of knee extension, but the shoulders are really over the barbell and they're really forward in the catch. So he doesn't want me as upright in the catch, which is funny because a lot of times I will catch super heavy weights, but my pelvis will tuck in a little bit, and he thinks this is from being too upright, from having the tiny femurs and the big dorsiflexion. But he wants me slightly forward in the catch position. It's fun. It's fun trying to relearn these positions and practice them. It's given me really good goals and focus in the clean, which is something I normally I would have spent some time, of course, clean as much as the snatch and the jerk, but the technique was something you would have seen maybe from when I did stuff with Gabriel a few months ago, trying to really fine tune. So it's good to have really precise things. So I like it at the moment. We'll see when we see kind of 170 plus weights, or more again. We'll see what it means in relation to, is it useful or is it very good,
Lovely process-orientated goal setting there.
Oh, is it the whip it back? Like
whip it back. Full circle on it. Dr. Demographics IE says, are the pants shorter in length? XXL is gargantuanly long. Yeah, so they are. One of the main changes we made to the pants this time around was on the length. So we'll have a full list, like a full fitting list of the inseam lengths for all the different sizes, but they are significantly shorter. So you should be able to do not only your gym training in them, but also if you were running, if you're playing like 5-a-side soccer, if you were doing track workouts, whatever it is, they should be the perfect length for that. And that was one of the main changes this time around.
Evan Lee, that's not true. You're definitely one of the most talented athletes I've seen in there. Is a lot.
Evan Lee it's outrageous that he was saying this.
That's crazy. How talented?
I'd love to see the person here. Get that person to give me a ring. I'll coach them.
Yeah.
Evan Lee is saying, I don't know much, but I was helping someone completely new to weightlifting the other day. I was amazed at how I could give them a cue. They were able to take the adjustment just like that. I wish it was that athletic. It takes me a while to make adjustments to technique. Evan takes the technique cues so well.
Yeah, doesn't take
phenomenally talented athlete. I don't know who this guy is.
Collie LeBleu. Do you know him?
No, I'm saying the lifter.
Oh, yeah. Can you guys do a review of Katag Kugev? Also, how is it that the Russians will hit amazing numbers as teenagers but never increase in their 20s? So, Katag was a 96 kilo lifter, 94. He was actually Europeans in Georgia. Funny story, when he was, I wanted to go watch him, but obviously I lifted that morning, so I went on an aggressive drinking binge and I did a power clean 100 kilo on a female's bar in my jeans while I was way too over the limit doing stuff like that, and I'm surprised I didn't get a career-ending injury while he was lifting. And I actually wanted to go see him, but the paths didn't lead to that. They led to karaoke and ice cream. But there you go. But he was 17 at Europeans and he did 180, 219. I'll actually show you a video there because he's probably he was going to be Russia's greatest weightlifter ever if he'd kept going. Unfortunately, I think he had some apparently the rumors were he's kind of some mental health issues, so he took a big break from weightlifting. He came back after the decimation of Russian weightlifting and hasn't been the same since. He kind of lost that momentum, and obviously due to drugs and stuff. So he did 180 to 19 as 17-year-old, super fast.
Jesus.
180. Wait till you see his clean and jerk. His clean and jerk is immaculate. Review, yeah, I'll definitely do a lifter of the week or something on him. Great, clean, phenomenal jerk, super powerful, incredible lifter. Just hasn't been the same since he's come back, but none of the Russians really have, so we know what that's about. How have Russian lifters been able to hit those amazing numbers as teenagers? Essentially, it's just that they hit their peak, their limit, because they've been lifting maybe for 10 plus years at this stage, maybe a little bit more. Obviously, a huge amount of performance-enhancing drugs, and then you eventually get to a limit where realistically they're not going to lift anymore. And then it's a maintenance of those at or beyond world record performance. Beyond that, then, so it's as simple as that.
I think the other thing with the Russians is like national countries, as I'd say, countries with national governing bodies that are that prolific do a very good job of finding out which athletes are going to be good weightlifters very early on, and so it just allows people to get in that groove and get in that niche a bit earlier, specialize a small bit earlier, and then be better. So it's like when you see Premiership footballers and they're getting picked up as like 12, 13, 14-year-olds and put into the academies or even earlier. Obviously, in other countries where they don't have the Premiership, they're not getting picked up quite so early. And you get really talented people kind of just hitting their groove a small bit later on, you know. They'll never get to the level of that.
Now, the funny thing about him is he didn't even peak yet. Like, he was on an absolute train. Like, he was going to huge numbers.
Jesus Christ.
Like, if he's doing that at 17, he was probably closing in on a 200-kilo snatch. Like, he genuinely could have been one of the most talented weightlifters of this generation if we'd seen him keep going at this, because this was like alien levels of stuff, but he had the snatch to match it. So we have no idea where he would have ended up if he'd kept going. He's probably one of the biggest shames of this kind of generation, the last 20 or 30 years, is to see where he would have ended up, because he's incredibly talented at 17 doing those numbers, drugs or no drugs. So it's a shame, but that is, you know, that's what happens. I'd love to know the true story. Apparently, I suppose he'd just admit some mental health things, and it was the best for him to not be lifting, apparently. So, which is perfectly like, obviously it's not far more important than lifting weights, but yeah, interesting.
Evan Lee asks, I know you guys have done a video on it, but how to be a better learner and what are the main takeaways? So the best thing to do, Evan, really would be go watch the video. But there's a couple of things that really define good learners or skilled learners. The first thing is like learning skills is a skill in itself. So the more experience you have with it, the better you're going to be. It's why you see the success of multi-sport athletes, particularly in field sports. See people who play a lot of sports when they're kids do much, much better or far better in field sport environments afterwards. So you see most kind of professional field sports athletes won't actually specialize too early on. The other thing you have to imagine is like every single time you learn a skill, you're going to pick up another little nuance of it. So it's not just physical skills you need to think about learning. Learning any sort of skill that requires some level of cognitive awareness, then some level of motor cognition obviously will be beneficial to it. But yeah, learning more skills more frequently would certainly be good at that. Another hallmark of skilled learners would be their ability to review something quite objectively. So reviewing their own performances, understanding how that performance went for them, and then bringing that information with them into the next session or the next time they perform that skill. So there's a couple of ones there. There's loads of stuff out there on skilled learners. It's definitely a trait people can influence. So yeah, it does make a big difference. So you got somebody who is quite skilled at learning new skills.
You will see the best learners are very aware of how they learn stuff, you know. So like, say, if you ask me and Dara how we learn new techniques in jiu-jitsu, like I group things together and associate them with single words. So it'll be like a train, it'll be like, and there'll be like slight variations, you know. So I will be like, okay, foot, then like his foot, then my right foot or something like that, you know, and I'll group a series of like images in my head associated with that one word, but I'd have to keep saying them over as the person is doing the demonstration. So they'll be like foot, leg, and I'll have to keep repeating it so until I get to do it myself and then practice it, and then I'll associate these words with an action, and then it usually goes quite well in that regard. But I think you do a little bit different.
Yeah, I do. I tend to be very associative with, like, so the jiu-jitsu thing's actually a great example because they're really complex movements, and you usually have to do 5 to 10 of them in a row for your like sequence to go well or something along those lines. So like an example would be like one of the things we were doing last night. If I grab Owen's arm, my foot was coming like inside his arm like this, and then my foot was like up behind it, right? So all I was thinking about with that foot position is like, it's like you're wearing, like you're in a saddle of a horse and you're pulling the stirrups up as if you're adjusting your stirrup strap, right? So a movement I've done hundreds or thousands of times before. I knew what that movement would feel like, my knee and my foot pulling in towards me, and then I'd associate that with that. So literally, as I'm holding the grip, my foot's in there, I think about stirrups, and then I'm free with my other hand to do the other stuff. That's generally what I tend to do with new movements, is like get very, very associative with it. In weightlifting and things like that, like an example would be for the top of my snatch, I used to always lean back too much. If I was trying to stay more forward and get more vertical with it, I used to just think about like that vertical jump. If you're doing a vertical jump on a vertical jump mat, you try and get your head as high to the ceiling as possible. And those things definitely tend to help me just associate them with things I've done previously.
And weightlifting will be a little bit different because I don't need to think about certain things. So when it's new stuff, for example, if something Anthony gives me, it'll be like lower back, I'll just be like lower back, throughout the whole lift. I'll be like lower back, lower back, lower back, lower back, like literally throughout the whole thing, you know, or maybe there might be two things, be like lower back or long pull. I'll just keep going through those words in my head to kind of to get it repeated and ingrained. Owen, have you spoken to Victor Getz much recently? With his stance and you know what? I'm glad he's not in Russia anymore. I haven't actually. I thought he was still in Russia, just looking at his Instagram. He's putting up some Snatch tutorial vids, but I haven't talked to him. I didn't know he had an anti-stance on the current thing. So I'd be interested to know where he is, because I thought he was still in Russia.
Hugo Sinfield says, what would be some key aspects in training for very short distance bike hill sprints with 15 seconds of effort? Would it look very similar to regular sprint training? What might some differences be? So in terms of, it definitely would look similar to regular hill bike sprinting in certain periods of the year. You probably have a very, very different level of priority based on maximal strength and maximal power outputs. And then your work capacity stuff will probably be a small bit lower, you know. So it's just slightly higher up that force velocity curve, higher 1RM numbers in the squat, higher 1RM numbers in power cleans and deadlifts. And then you're getting more and more specialized when you're getting that short and fast with the hill sprint stuff. You probably do have a bit more size, or you have a bit more allowance for size of the rider. But yeah, it's just a little further down that specialization path. So in the same way where if you were going from normal road cycling to ultra endurance road cycling, you'd be going in the opposite direction. And then from like short distance road cycling to road cycling time trial work, you'd go in that more kind of 1RM direction. And then this would be a move from quite high sprint emphasis to very, very high sprint emphasis with a higher strength output as well. If you imagine, like, if you're hill sprinting on a bike, obviously bikes, you're transferring force into pedals, and then that's giving you linear force going forward. If you imagine you're now putting that same amount of force down, but you're going up a hill, you have to increase your output because you're going up a hill, and you'll do that through more aggressive and more powerful strokes each time you push that pedal down.
Don't forget, that longer distance conditioning is useful in this scenario for ability to do more per training session. So more of those hill sprints in training, or more of your hill sprints on a bike at home or a stationary bike or sprinting or whatever it is, don't for like general work capacity in this scenario as well. So having longer steady state conditioning is useful to facilitate your ability to do multiple ones of these bouts as well. Edwin is saying merch Friday. We just have to get something sorted, but Friday will be going up for sale. Pre-order for the t-shirts. actual order for pants when they're gone, they are gone for a while at least, and then t-shirts on a pre-order basis, so everyone should get a t-shirt. Rad Reynolds is saying, do you guys have an opinion on doing a Clarence, in inverted commas, bunny ears, and substituting all high bar squats for brief pause squats? I'm trying to save my knees and beat the weak quad good morning pattern into Believing. Yes, and my opinion is don't do it for sure. I would say if you have very sore knees or you have sore issue with your knees, priority number one is fixing your knees, not adjusting your training around and altering habits that you don't want to be using, and techniques that you don't want to be using, and styles of variations that you want to be using, and motor habits that you don't want to be using. You don't want to be adjusting that because you'll have to fix them after you fix your knees. If you fix your knees, and if you're not fixing your knees, they're probably only going to get worse. This won't really save them. So my opinion is definitely don't do this. My opinion is go sort out the issue with your knees, figure out what it is. Knee stuff, you generally tends to get worse unless you address it, like most injuries. So no, I don't think you should do that. You should fix your knees, then get back to training properly. That's the best way. It's the harder way, and it's the less kind of self-gratuitous way, but it's the better way in the long run for yourself.
We pick a couple of comments.
Yeah. The Uchi man said, well, lads, I just walked past you in the city, but didn't find my out. Thoughts on people saying they're fans in public. I love when people come up. In gyms.
2 seconds, two comments later, he said, then lean in for a kiss.
No, I don't mind that idea. No, I don't. I'm very happy with people. I love when people say it. I mean, because it lets us know that things are getting out there, and it's very interesting to see what kind of people are watching the show, and the YouTube and podcasts and stuff. Because a lot of times it's like weightlifting or powerlifting or rowing or sprinting or something. Any random number of things. So it's always very interesting to meet people. Phil Mannon said, give me a word of encouragement as I'm squatting my shed. Phil, don't be a bitch. Jackson Harper is saying, do core stability benchmarks, weighted planks, side planks, leg raises apply to endurance athletes also? And would you also expect them to spend 30% of their training timing on core stability? The landmarks would, because they're generally quite low-balling landmarks. They're not looking for double body weight planks or anything like that. They're just kind of run-of-the-mill strength and conditioning kind of landmarks, which apply to most people. In terms of 30% of your time on core training, that sounds like a lot. A lot of endurance athletes do not good strength training, from what I've seen. A lot of times they'll funnel their strength training into body weight only stuff for reasons I can't really fathom. So don't get caught up in the traditional runners strength training kind of hallmarks. Don't get caught up in the cliche of doing loads of core stuff or doing loads of like leg extensions, doing like sets of 30. Don't do the Cam Hanes on it where you're doing 100 sets of push downs or 100 sets of leg extensions. Just do normal strength training, normal, honest to God, run of the mill strength training. And the normal principles that applies to don't do the usual things runners do. It's funny, runners will either be in a camp, they'll never do any kind of dedicated programming. They'll just do a lot of running, and then if they do some strength training, they kind of come into it with some, I don't want to say wrong notions, but less than ideal notions around what the training should be, and don't treat endurance training like some kind of abstract sport, and you get this a little bit of like martial arts and jiu-jitsu and stuff, the art not sport fallacy. And I think Darren talked about this one of these videos recently. Just treat it like any other sport, and you look at your S&C needs, and you look at your gym stuff, and your gym stuff doesn't need to look like endurance training. Having ability to maintain good spinal integrity and pelvic integrity is very, very useful, of course, for runners and force transfer and maintaining good posture. But don't put all your eggs in one basket. Just train the things you need to train.
Ara CSW says, hey lads, currently struggling with recovery from training that used to be perfectly manageable and can't understand why. Any suggestions to look at, diet, sleep, etc. is good, and not just soreness. It's more like my whole body's dead despite not feeling fatigued. As there's definitely a couple of things here, Ara. So the first thing is like how out of shape you are. So this might be training that you did without any bother 3 years ago, and now you haven't trained at all in 3 years, and obviously that training will absolutely kick your ass, right? The other thing you need to look at is just age. Like, what's the difference? Were you doing that training when you were 18 and you're now 26? Things are going to be very, very different in terms of how you recover, how you're able to adapt, and how quickly you'll progress through a training cycle. And then in terms of like aside from those kind of large scale, big picture things, you may need to look at like, are all your blood markers in range? Are you in good physical condition right now? So you could be fighting an infection you're not aware of. You could also be run down, or you could generally be fight like your immune system could just be under a lot of pressure. Also, the amount of stress in your life could have massively changed. So you could have been someone who was living at home and going to university, and now you might be working full-time with a family and a job, and have a massive amount of stress on you, so in those cases your body is always fighting against something, and no matter what you do with diet or sleep, if you always get that induction of stress into you, you're always going to struggle to get out of that kind of rut. So definitely look at that, look at lifestyle in general. And then the last thing I would say is like, a good old hormone panel and a set of bloods will never be a bad thing to look at. Never be a bad thing to look at. In this case, if you were doing this kind of training last year and now suddenly you can't do it, a lot of athletes we've dealt with over the last year or so have struggled massively coming back from training after the pandemic hit them, and that the longer term health implications of that in the kind of 12 months to 18 months following recovery from it is definitely they're more pronounced than what a lot of other just general viruses and illnesses would have been, so in that case, blood panel, hormone panel, definitely get them done.
Okay, my last one is Prime Nathanos. Do you fellas have a favorite sports documentary? Mine is actually The Last Dance these days. Mine is Icarus, 100%, without a doubt, no doubt about it. And it clearly, but beyond everything else, is Icarus.
Mine is definitely there's old rugby Lions documentaries from the 90s where rugby was just becoming professional, or a lot of them weren't even professional yet. So those kind of chasing the Lions documentaries were phenomenal from an early 2000s. Just I love Icarus as well. Icarus is a great documentary. Okay, guys, thanks very much for watching. We'll see you all later on in the week with a live stream that won't have this title.
Yes.